Once in a while, I run into a training or a modality that I think is actually something that could improve all therapists' practice. And in fact, in this case, caused me to question why this wasn't part of graduate schools for therapists and social workers, and even doctors, honestly. And it's quite a simple method, and I think that might be why it hasn't really caught on mainstream yet, but it's also because the book and manual have just been released in 2026, and I'm talking about Mindfulness-Based Somatic Emotional Processing, or MSEP, as they have nicknamed it, and they are Dr. Robert Weisz, PhD, and Daniel Blackwood, licensed professional counselor, and they are located in New Mexico, doing a lot of trainings out of the Evolution Group. And this is one of those methods or processes or whatever you want to call it that I really hope catches on in the mainstream, and you'll see why in the interview. Allow me to introduce Dr. Robert Weisz, PhD, first. He is the creator of mindfulness-based somatic emotional processing, and he's a retired clinical psychologist. He has also done consulting, educating, training, and is a life coach in limited private practice in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Dr. Weisz is the developer of mindfulness-based somatic emotional processing, a new and highly focused approach to activate and support emotional processing in counseling and psychotherapy. He has so many interesting life experiences and things to say. I definitely think you should read the book and check out their website as well. Dr. Robert Weisz was born in Lima, Peru in 1944. His parents were German Jewish refugees from the Holocaust. He lived in Peru, Bolivia, and Chile before immigrating to the United States in 1957 at the age of 13. There's a lot more history and life experience to be shared from Dr. Weisz, and I would encourage you to check out the website, or if you're interested, just order the book, Mindfulness-Based Somatic Emotional Processing. And now, Daniel Blackwood, Masters LPCC. He's the co-author of the Mindfulness-Based Somatic Emotional Processing and the author of Integrity Recovery. Daniel offers training for therapists who want to broaden their scope of working specifically with emotional processing and emotional regulation in the larger context of mind-body therapies. Many trainings are held at the lovely campus of the Evolution Group in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Daniel Blackwood began working in the field in 1984 and obtained his bachelor's degree in psychology from the University of New Mexico and his master's in counseling from the University of New Mexico later on in 1988. After 10 years of practice, Daniel founded the Evolution Group, and that is where a lot of the trainings are held. So let's get into it. And welcoming to the podcast, Dr. Robert Weisz and Daniel Blackwood, LPC. Thank you so much for being here today.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you, Paul.
Excellent. And I have been reading your book, which you have released, Mindfulness-Based Somatic Emotional Processing, a guide for patients and therapists. And that's an interesting order to things. You're saying this is for your average person and for therapists. I just noticed that order. Was that intentional?
It was very intentional. When we thought about writing a book about this process, we first were thinking about doing it as a manual for professional clinicians. But we've also discovered from experience that this process is very transferable. It's very easy to train the client to do this process because they're experiencing it in the clinical situation, and then to take it home as a way of managing and relating to their emotional life, which is really what's driving any of the problematic situations that bring people into therapy.
Excellent. I'm a big fan of removing barriers. So it sounds like you're trying to make this accessible to the general public, and obviously therapists could, like as I know, we'll talk about this later, but they can get training with you both and your group, which we'll get into. So, tell me about how long have you both been doing this, what you would call mindfulness-based somatic emotional processing type therapy interventions?
Well, I developed the process over the last 50 years of my clinical life as a psychologist and a psychotherapist. but it became a specific process around 2013.
Okay.
And then I'll just turn it over to Daniel. He can tell you the rest of the story.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, so I met Robert, I believe, first in 2015, and in 2016, he trained our group utilizing MSEP. And as part of that encounter, I realized that it would be really helpful to have a text or a training manual. So I brought that up to Robert, and he agreed that that would be a good idea. And we set about writing the book that you just mentioned that's just come out from Inner Traditions that really goes into depth about how a layperson could use MSEP for most of the things that come up in daily life, and also, guidance for if it's something that is bigger than things that come up in daily life. That is to say, maybe something traumatic or that requires support from someone trained, how to pursue that, and then also the second half, which trains clinicians in how to use this in their practice.
Okay. Excellent. Yes. And it's interesting, just that you're utilizing things that I've heard of before, such as, mindfulness and things like that. But and obviously somatic, but this emotional processing, it seems quite important to me, because as a therapist, sometimes in our field, sometimes emotions are seen as like a secondary to a goal, or something you work on with kids. And in fact, when I was reading through parts of the book and some of the materials you sent me, it seemed that you were both making an argument that that emotions were extremely important to life and to overcoming a lot of things people face. Can you maybe give me a little bit of a primer on that for our listeners?
Yes, I'd love to do that. The basic truth is that we human beings are governed, defined, guided, motivated, moved by our emotions. Our emotions are the life forces that motivate, drive, and in a way govern the way that we experience life. So we have to really come back to that very fundamental reality. And then from recognizing that reality, we want to be able to have a way of meeting our emotions as opposed to just somehow pushing them away or trying to fix them or pretending that they don't exist. And so this book is really about how we can develop a respectful and effective and honest relationship with our emotions. And the way to do that is to approach them in a very open and curious and kind of respectful way, and notice how they are being experienced. And emotions are being experienced in the body. The mind creates a story about the emotions, but the body is the territory where emotions are being experienced. So this process is really incredibly simple if we bring a curious, open attention to how we're experiencing emotions in the body. We are approaching them, we are being curious and open about them, and we're waiting to see what they need to do as they shift and move about and change in our body. And in doing so, we're activating an intrinsic capacity in the body that's not cognitive, that is processing and regulating that emotional experience. It's very simple. It's how to pay attention to emotions, where they are, as they are in the body.
Excellent. I've got another question, but I want to see if Daniel wants to expand on any of that. Oh, Daniel, yeah, just real quick, you muted yourself. That's okay.
The dog was barking. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just as a quick example, maybe, yesterday I had an exchange with an employee that was frustrating. And so 20 years ago, before learning this, I would have gone home, felt frustrated through the evening, probably lost sleep over it, done a lot of thinking about it, but not known really how to work with what I was feeling. And so, what MSEP offers me is a way to be with that frustration, to be curious about it, to let it move through me, and ultimately to let it inform me. And that's a very different way of relating to emotion and what's happening in our body. And so, just as recently as yesterday, I used it, and it brought me to a place where I was left feeling calm and open to the possibilities. And then, lo and behold, this doesn't always happen, but lo and behold, I got a text from the employee kind of making things more balanced, and we ended up having a great exchange. So that's often what happens after memories are allowed, not memories, I'm sorry, emotions are allowed to move through us and be processed. Really good things tend to happen rather than our being stuck with them or them giving us emotional indigestion.
Yes, that's a very good example. And I think what you're talking about makes a lot of sense. And I'm going to get into the how in a minute, but I feel like I still got to convince the listeners of the paradigm, because I believe in the Western individualistic culture, and especially with those of us who have been raised male, socialized male, there is often uh, a narrowing. I've experienced a narrowing of emotions to only a few of them being acceptable, and actually that most of them are a nuisance to us and our goals and our strivings. And in fact, I'd like you to comment on that. But I was reading in the press release, you were talking about the neuroscientist that I cannot pronounce her name. What is it? Jack Paxep?
Pansk?
Yeah. Pantsup, yeah, summed up the primacy of emotions in human life, saying, "I feel, therefore I am," which was really interesting coming out of that book, The Archaeology of Mind, Neuroevolutionary Origins of Human Emotions, a scientific framework for the 7 intrinsic emotional systems that humans share with many other mammalian species. So this is a scientist saying this, and I was so stunned when I read that, because I had not seen the neuroscience comments on this. And these different systems that are related to uh, care, grief, play, expectancy, fear, anger, lust, and I'm not naming them all correctly because you really need to read the book. But the paradigm that emotions are not just something that's a nuisance culturally, but actually something to work through and a natural occurring phenomenon in mammals, and that I think that right there brings the attention of a lot of people that think emotions are potentially annoying and we should only focus on a few. So can you kind of comment on whatever comes off from my comment there?
Yes, well, we receive some really potent cultural conditioning that causes us to believe that we have to be in control of our emotions, that often they are problematic and bothersome events that we need to get rid of or fix or somehow hide from, and that they are, not to be trusted, and that if we want to be successful and effective in this society, we have to be in charge of our emotions, control them, suppress them, make them go away, so that they are not causing inconveniences in our life. So that cultural training is pretty pervasive. And you were mentioning how men are taught. Well, men are taught it's okay to have anger because that somehow is congruent with the image of a strong and powerful male. But all humans have the whole range of emotions. And if we just accept that the cultural training is to deny them or to fix them or to explain them away, and just begin to develop a different relationship with them, which is to recognize that they're there, for one thing, to be able to approach them through this process by bringing attention to how they're happening in the body, and by maintaining that witnessing awareness of emotion as it's unfolding in the body, we are activating an inherent capacity that's in the body that's not mental or cognitive, that actually regulates and processes that emotional experience and emotional energy. So this is pretty simple stuff, but in the context of how society views emotion, it's like only a few of them are acceptable, and certain ones we call them negative emotions. And that's all. There are no negative emotions. These are life forces that are happening in the body. And we want to be able to have an honest and effective relationship with these emotional forces because they are there and they shape every aspect of our experience. And if we get to know them better by working with them, by approaching them, by respectfully witnessing them, they teach us a lot about who we are. They give us a lot of information about how we're dealing with certain situations. And they allow us then, when we develop that respectful relationship with them, to be more honest and authentic with ourselves and in our relationships with others. So I think that's a pretty big deal.
I think that is a big deal.
I often
Go ahead,
find
Daniel.
that,
Yeah.
sorry, I often find that when men have the opportunity to experience MSEP, what happens is that they become aware of something deeper than their acculturated habits with emotions. And that is that we're having an emotional experience, we humans, and that when that is accessed, when we're able to safely and comfortably access our emotions, we're able to open up our experience as a human and experience relief or be able to process things that have been stuck or that are held back by acculturation. And I found that men who have learned this really deeply appreciate that sense of freedom, actually. Yeah.
Well, and I want to delve into that for a second because I think we're all clinicians. So we say the word process emotions
Yeah.
and stuck. We can get stuck. And I
Yeah.
wanted to give an example of what that could mean to somebody. So, for instance, just a typical person I might work with is having this difficulty expressing themselves to their partner or a friend, and they get to a point in the conversation where their anger or their frustration rises to a point where they start becoming louder or slightly more aggressive because the emotion, I'm assuming, am I wrong here, is sort of manifesting in the body.
Yes.
And the felt sense of it is possibly increasing the volume and causing them to kind of, go from conversational tone to possibly louder tone, which could cause then a problem with the partner or friend who might say, "Hey, why are you being so aggressive?" Or, why are you doing this? And that person would then go, "I wasn't trying to do that. I was just trying to tell you what I was thinking about or how I felt about this or how angry I am at this situation." And then they feel what I would use the term, which is non-clinical, but it's a term we all use, is stuck because they feel like, what did they do wrong? And now they're having social consequences for raising their voice in a conversation. I feel like that's quite a typical situation. Could you both give me your takes on something like that or processing emotions, what that means for people?
Yeah, certainly. The example, the illustration that you just presented is a perfect demonstration of how we, number one, deny our emotion. Number two, struggle to make it go away. And in that struggle, we fail to make it go away because the outcome of the struggle is that we feel even more helpless and frustrated, which increases the intensity of the emotional response. And then we try to find some kind of a mental explanation to somehow fix the problem, and that doesn't work. And then we feel stuck and bad about ourselves. So that's a typical approach of somehow, pushing it away, struggling. And that struggle is an important component because in that struggle to get rid of the emotion or somehow fix it, we fail because we don't have the capacity to fix emotions or just make them disappear. But that's what we're trained to do. So we're trained to get into a frustrating situation, which increases the emotional loading, which makes it more difficult to manage the situation, and which causes us then to feel more frustrated and alienated from our own emotions. It's a perfect no-win situation.
Alienated. I want to come back to that. I feel like Daniel has got something to say, though.
Always do. This is exciting stuff. So, first of all, I think it's helpful to go back to the word processing that I think you keyed in on, Paul, which is, it's helpful to think of our emotional system as like a digestive tract. It's the emotional digestive tract, the limbic system, if you will. And so, um, we want to be able to digest our emotions, to process them so that they don't stay stuck in our system, unprocessed, undigested, which causes indigestion, right? Or heartburn, literally. And so anger is a great example of that. Anger is one of those emotions that tends to be cumulative. And so if we don't process our anger, then, some poor person at the store, when we get irritated, gets the sum total of all the accumulated anger that's maybe built up for, I don't know, a year or years even. So it's an enormous blow up that's really inconsistent with what the situation calls for. So having a regular emotional digestive tract really helps us to be in balance, to be in flow, and to relate to ourselves in a more helpful and peaceful way. The second thing that you brought up was just when we're in fight or flight, like we can be in dialogue with another. A very helpful thing to do, and this happens a lot in doing couples therapy, where the couple's beginning to escalate like they would at home, and I'll pause them and say, "Hey, listen, you can do that. You can do that at home for free, but you're here with me. And what would you say if we took a moment here to practice something that would be really helpful to you when you are at home?" And so we pause and help them process what's happening in their bodies right now. And tons of learning takes place and tons of helpful digestion takes place right in that moment. And really cool things can emerge when our systems are back, in that nice ventral vagal state of openness. So this really trains people to like become aware of their window of tolerance and how to work with it when it's too hot or uh, too cool.
It sounds like, yeah, too hot and too cool. I like because that illustration is easier for us to understand versus
Yeah,
sympathetic and parasympathetic, right? But when we
yeah,
get
yeah.
upset or we get triggered or we get frustrated or whatever, our sort of cortisol levels can start spiking. And when that happens, there's certain parts of the brain, the prefrontal cortex especially, that kind of go into this protective mode, and that can cause all sorts of behavioral reactions, and then that can cause consequences in our relationship. So what I'm hearing is that this approach of mindfulness, and in this sense, I don't really I sense it as just like you're kind of it's a big word, a lot of the things there, but sort of this awareness, acceptance, and curiosity about the emotions taking place in me, so I can learn more about myself. I can process that information, and then I can utilize it next time I'm faced with this emotion or the situation. Is that a very gross summary of what I'm hearing there?
And yeah, it is, I think. But I want to just bring out a really important contrast here is that
Yeah.
we define ourselves in this age, in this society, as beings who have this incredible mental capacity in the mind that is the instrument for resolving and dealing with everything. But we're not taught to recognize that there is another resource in the body that is capable of processing these emotional situations and emotional energies somatically. But in this society, we're trained to mentally process. Why do I feel this way? Whose fault is it? What did I do wrong? What's going on here? Who's responsible? What can I do to fix it? We are driven to impose some kind of a mental solution to an emotional event. And there is not a mental solution. In fact, there is not a solution, but there is an activity. It's an experience that's happening that's rather important. And what we want to do with mindfulness is to bring attention to the experience that's happening, and emotions are happening in the body. before we tell a story about them. So bring attention to where those emotions are happening and to witness them. And what is witnessing? It's a curious, open, non-critical, non-controlling quality of attention. Basically, being really curious and open and just noticing. And that's the prompt that we use the most. Just notice how you're experiencing that in your body right now. But that quality of attention is not interfering, not attempting to control, not having to explain, but simply bringing the mental capacity of curious and open attention. That's mindfulness to the immediate experience of the emotion in the body. It's that simple, really. But that simple approach does activate an intrinsic capacity in the body to digest that emotional experience, which is life energy. It's happening in the body. And to release some of the emotional charge that's attached to that experience as it's being processed. And that simple approach is so much more effective and so much more approachable than somehow trying to fix and resolve something mentally that is not a mental experience.
Yes. And that, I think, brings me to a couple questions before we get to a couple of the tools as a preview of the book and the training program. I want to kind of go there next, but I want to discuss this concept. And I've said this before in the podcast, but from every research person I've talked to, and now you as well, who've written books, humans, our experience in the body, whether we're aware of it or not, happens in milliseconds. And we then build a story around our response or reaction that is post. And a lot of that's cultural. So I've had people, this is like a common one. They'll say, because I'm of this country of origin, that's why I do that, which is both a little bit of a joke, a little bit of a jab, and a little bit of an excuse to continue doing this behavior. Well, I'm just X ethnicity, so that's why I do this. So like I'm German. So the joke about being controlling and rigid and working too much is that, oh, it's just, I'm German. And I have relatives who literally will say that because they're from Germany, or first generation. And I have friends who are Italian, and they, when he lost his temper, he said, well, I'm just Italian. That's what we do. We just we say things passionately, right? Which is just sort of a label and a cop-out. But I wonder, I wanted comments on that, but I really thought it was interesting to talk about this alienation concept, because it's almost like you're saying, like, by denying or by labeling or by not processing and not being aware or not dealing with the natural phenomenon of the emotional experience in the body, you can become alienated, which can cause problems. And I kind of wanted to go to a little bit of what's your take on the cultural, but what's your take on alienation? I kind of want to hear about that.
Well, just think about this. If we continue to have consistently negative and frustrating and unproductive experiences in dealing with our emotions, we're going to develop some level of alienation. These feelings are problematic. They shouldn't be happening. I will do my best to make them go away or somehow hide them as best as I can. So that's the cultural conditioning that shapes the response, and the chronic response to that emotional event, those emotional events, creates a sense of separation, alienation. These feelings are problematic things that have to be denied or fixed or made to disappear in order for my life to be okay.
And what happens if we do that? If we try to fix them and push them away, what are some consequences of this that we see typically?
Well, when we try to fix emotions, they don't fix. When we try to get rid of them, they don't go away. When we try to somehow, just sort of get rid of them, it doesn't work. And so that's a certain amount of chronic frustration with our emotional experience that begins to shape an attitude of alienation and distance, which foments the willingness to struggle against or somehow deny or get rid of a very important aspect of our humanity.
It's interesting, when the last training we held, which was just a week ago, of therapists. It was a wonderful uh, gathering of people from just a broad spectrum of cultures, Native American, uh, all quadrants of the country. It was really a diverse and appreciable gathering of folks. And one thing that really rang true is that once we drop down beneath the thinking, beneath the orientations, down into the experience that the body's having and its sensory experience and the sensory experience of those feelings, something moves for us where we get um, often a reduction in intensity of emotion and a kind of clarity emerges that I think is available regardless of orientation. It just requires maybe a little support and staying with it. And so it was one of the takeaways from that training was how diverse a group it was and how this seems to help uh, people from any cultural orientation.
Well, that is great to hear. Now I feel like the audience is a mix of folks who are just interested in this topic, and of course clinicians and grad students. So I would love to just know, this is a book and a training manual, but just maybe a technique or something that you've utilized recently that from the book or from your work that you wanted to kind of show us, if possible.
Yeah, well, that there is only one technique that's really presented, which is to mindfully, well, first of all, to just have some level of recognition and acknowledgement that some kind of emotional event is happening to us. Number one, I'm feeling emotion. I'm feeling really frustrated. I'm feeling really angry. Just to be able to approach something that we recognize is there. And then the specific approach is that it's a mindful quality of attention, which is we bring this curious, open, and often compassionate attention to how the emotional energies are being present in the body in the moment. And that curious, open attention activates that intrinsic somatic capacity for emotional processing, emotional digestion. So it's that simple. We acknowledge that we're feeling something. We begin to pay attention to how it's manifesting in the body in the moment. And we bring a curious, open, non-critical attention and awareness to that experience. That's that simple. That's it. Anybody can do that.
Right, but difficult because if you were acculturated to, it's simple, but it's complicated for folks. That's what I was trying to say. Because if you're acculturated to think that, how do I bring compassion to myself? How do I bring curiosity? How do I bring attention to something I might be ashamed of? Or I've been taught that boys don't cry and that women should be sweet and not challenging, or sort of these sort of cultural tropes that you sort of hear. And honestly, weirdly enough, and this is, you said control, we don't try to control the emotions. I actually think that when folks are handed some of these cultural, I don't know, blockages of emotion, it is to actually try to control them by some other force, and then they start controlling themselves. Is that am I right on that, or am I just throwing out spitballing here?
Well, let me just bring it back to the basics here. When people are having a difficult time with their emotions, it's because they're doing what they're culturally conditioned to do, which is explain it away, find a solution to it, fix it, cause it to go away because it's bothersome, and then we try to push it away. So the traditional way of dealing with these events is what's confusing. This process is very simple. I'm feeling something. Okay, where am I feeling it? I'm feeling some pressure in my chest, some heat in my face. Now let's just bring just an open, curious attention to that. Just notice, and it's only happening one breath at a time, one moment at a time. Very concrete, very simple. What's happening in my body right now? That lump in my stomach is beginning to get hot. Keep noticing what's happening there. Just keep noticing and keep breathing more slowly and deeply. That simple quality of attention, which anybody can learn with just a little bit of instruction and practice, and that's what the book is about, allows us to begin to approach our emotional experience in a very simple, very different, but incredibly effective and productive way.
Oh, I agree with you. I think the hard part is for us, some of us people, we might need the guide. Like, I love that you had the book, but we might need the therapist to help us because we feel so many other emotions conflicting about just the basic idea of trying that. And we need the coaxing, like you said, stay with that. What are you noticing with that? I think that's great. And then you're saying, well, with practice, this can become more of a natural process that moves the emotion through a process of digestion and makes you feel better or clear-headed or back to homeostasis of some type. I'm not sure. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. That's just my interpretation.
Yeah, well, when you look at the title, Mindfulness-Based Somatic Emotional Processing, the components of this approach are not new words that people haven't heard of. They're a wonderful combination of those different approaches in a way that is simple, as Robert's describing, but takes practice. So for some of us, we might be able to get that just from reading the book and practicing that on our own. For others, we may need to have someone support us in that practice because some of the emotions that we're dealing with are challenging for us. And for others still, therapists in particular, getting trained, and when we do offer training, can be the thing that really makes a difference. I find that therapists, after they learn this, often come back and say, not only is this sort of the platform from which I'm doing therapy, but I use it myself in my daily life, and I use it during session in order to keep myself grounded so that I don't need to go off and work out after work or, do yoga or stretching because I've been taking care of myself as I'm going every session. It allows me to process the emotion that I'm going through as I'm doing therapy. So I come out the other end, and this is my experience entirely, is at the end of the day, I often feel, I might feel physically tired from having put in the day, but I actually feel pretty inspired because I've been with my client in such an attuned way with myself and am processing the emotion as I go. So all kinds of wonder and curiosities are popping up and percolating as a result of doing this.
Yes, that is something I want to comment on that. I know Dr. Weisz has a comment. I want to say it real quick. I feel that our culture, at least the work culture of the United States, has shifted so much into controlling people's schedules.
Yep.
that I was poisoned, and subconsciously to think, well, when you're at work, you're at work. And then when you're at home, then you can take care of yourself and breathe and eat right and stretch and all that. But you've just neglected yourself for 8 hours, so what is that? Right? How is that healthy at all? And that's not integrated. So helping yourself as you go. And I've worked on that a lot, so I'm not doing that anymore. But what I mean is, it's contagious. And the way we deal with time, trying to squeeze everything out of our time to be as efficient as possible, can cause quality to reduce. Obviously, that's a business concept, is that your quality goes away. But as a person, your attention and your ability to understand self can be completely distorted due to this time crunch. Got to know, Dr. Robert, I'm just saying a lot of stuff. So what are your thoughts?
Well, I want to come back into a core issue here, which is the myth of control. We receive powerful training that we have to have control.
Yeah.
Control of our behavior, control of our emotions, control of our situation, control of, if we're working with other people, some level of control. And control is somehow then equated with effectiveness. And that drives a really wicked kind of mental approach to somehow discipline ourselves, to manage the situation, to assert our competence or effectiveness on other people. And all of that doesn't work because we don't have control of very much except what we're choosing to do in this moment. We don't have control over our emotions. And our emotions are what's driving our behaviors. So instead of attempting to find control or assert control in order to be effective or to reach a solution, we want to simply witness. We want to simply be there with what's really important in this moment, which is what our emotions are doing in our body. And when we do that, again, just simple, effective witnessing awareness, when we bring that witnessing awareness to our experience, which is happening in the body, we are actually activating and able to work with these emotional energies, not by exerting control, but by respectful, open, and compassionate attention. So bringing those qualities of attention into our emotional life is not impossible. It takes a little bit of willingness and practice, but we are wired for compassion. Compassion is necessary for us to survive by supporting each other out of caring for each other. So that compassion can be brought into our own experience. That compassionate attention to our emotional experience is something that we can train to do more effectively, but it's so simple and so effective and so kind that we don't want to pretend that it's not possible. We want to approach it with some training and some motivation, and that allows us to be in our lives with a different relationship to the emotions that drive every aspect of our human experience.
Yes, that's a very good summary. Daniel, did you have something?
Well, I'm just reminded of the words that Robert said at the very beginning, which is that we human beings, we're actually having an emotional experience, and it's underneath everything. So I think that I feel, therefore I am, is very, very important to take time in our life to learn about, because we're being trained to think, therefore I am. So it brings a balance, right? It's just about having balance. And so this is an offering that helps us to cultivate that other way of knowing, the other part of our experience that's so central and fundamental.
Yeah, I think an oft neglected part of our experience. And so,
Yes.
because even let's just say in the US, the dominant is thinking, and the idea is to try to control in business, which is their main way of making money here besides agriculture, which is a business. And then we have the whole other crowd, like the binary. It's like, well, you got to work out, you got to move your body, you got to go CrossFit, you got to run, you got to do that. And then you get a little bit in the yoga crowd, which is in the middle of this, where they're like, well, yes, you got to stretch and you got to work out, but you got to bring in the emotions. But I'm not exactly sure where the crowd is that's saying, hey guys, we are having an emotional experience. We've got to be able to deal with this because look at all these issues it's causing when we don't. That would be your group, obviously. But like what I mean is, I felt like when mindfulness got brought into the mainstream, it became like something to sell, products versus the actual practice of mindfulness, or it was stripped away from the elements of compassion, like you just discussed. Like it's a compassionate. It's not just awareness; it's awareness without this attachment of control, which I think goes into I won't go in too far into this, but my theory is that it goes into the depths of the way that our country has been founded on control and power, that is sort of sifted down into the culture. But now I'm rambling into another podcast episode. But I'm wondering how, because I feel like as a therapist, this was lacking from my grad school, actually. And I'm kind of ticked about that because I've learned a lot of therapy techniques. And obviously the rapport, is still obviously a primary part of of the therapy, and not controlling the patient, and working on the alliance of what type of technique you're going to use together. So there's a power, not having the power differential, at least at counseling school. I don't know about other schools. But then we kind of neglected the emotions as sort of a side effect of symptoms, so that if the symptoms are too great, that means the emotions are obviously going to be all over the place, because that person has this depression or anxiety or post-traumatic stress or whatever it might be. And what I'm hearing from your take is, like, once you get trained in this, you could apply. I mean, at least it seems to me I could apply this to any of the stuff I've learned. But why haven't we learned this in grad school? I would love a hot take from both of you.
Well, again, our trainings reflect the values of the culture, which is, to analyze, to find an explanation. And graduate school training is all about how to do this, and how to understand this, and how to analyze this to find the mental solution that hopefully will be the solution to the problem. But I want to go back to this word you mentioned, rapport. This work is all about developing rapport with our emotions, as opposed to approaching them as something that needs to be fixed or explained away. And when we have that rapport with our emotions, we're having a different relationship with them. And in that rapport, we are able to be present with them, to really listen to how they're expressing themselves inside of us, and to really gain some basic understanding about who we are and how we are, not only in a given situation, but in terms of how we conduct our human life. And I want to, again, go back to this word about presence. Presence is a really powerful instrument. It's a willingness to be here with what is happening now without trying to control it, criticize it, or make it go away. That is a really important kind of approach variable. We want to be present, really receive, really notice, really experience. And when we do that, number one, we're having a different relationship. Number two, in that different relationship, we're empowering the body to digest and to process that experience, so that, number one, the emotional pressure of it tends to be released rather effectively. Number two, as that emotional pressure is released, we're perceiving that situation in a more clear way that's not tinted by the powerful effect of the emotions that are present. So a lot is happening from this simple kind of quality of presence with our direct experience of emotion. That's what the book is about. That's what MSEP is being present with our emotional experience as it happens in the body. That presence, again, the quality of attention that it brings into the moment, is a very powerful ingredient that we have available to us that we haven't learned to use properly.
And Paul, I think you're right. This is missing from our graduate preparation. No question about it. And in fact, MSEP is just being implemented at Southwestern College in Santa Fe, which is a specific counseling college here in the Southwest. And our state university, one of our state universities, New Mexico State, has expressed interest in implementing it as a core course. And our goal is to get this into graduate programs, because we think it's a vital text and training for students who are going to become therapists, as a way of both taking care of themselves first and foremost, and how they hold a space for their clients. So your intuition's right on there, and I agree with what you said.
Thank you. I'm really glad to hear that's starting to get into the schools in New Mexico. And yeah, I'd love to see this, because, yeah, I mean, I feel like a pretty good grad school program, but I feel like we don't have a full course discussing emotions and how to work with our clients' emotions. It's just silly, and it doesn't make much logical sense to me at all. And I didn't have it, and I haven't heard many other people have it. So I think this fits in perfectly. But you, talking about training, though, you are both training people actively, MBSEP or MSEP, so mindfulness-based somatic emotional processing.
Yeah.
And you have this institute, and you're doing trainings based on different people's requests to therapy groups. Where else are you doing these?
Yeah, if people want to learn about training, they can go to www.mbsep.com, where lots of information about MSEP is held, and links to trainings that are upcoming and being offered are available. And the book now is available wherever books are sold. And, I think that the combination of reading the book and getting the training is really thorough preparation for therapists and lay people who might want to learn about this. And it's a game changer. I can just say that as someone who was trained through our graduate programs years ago, the heavy emphasis was on cognitive types of interventions, all of which I'm grateful for. But I feel like it was not a neck down training; it was neck up, if you will. And so, getting this into the hands of therapists, all the ones that we've encountered, are deeply grateful for it, because it rounded out for them their training experience, their understanding of how the rubber really meets the road for us humans. We're having an emotional experience. We very often don't have training or guidance for how to be with that, right? We, as Robert described, we try to control it or move off of it. And so this is really, I feel, I would submit humbly, very vital information and training that rounds out how we know to be with our experience as humans.
Yes, I agree completely. I think that the words rounding out the education really stuck with me. I think obviously there's the personal, like, yes, we could all use this, and I agree with that. I was just coming from the clinician perspective thinking, yes, this would round things out actually, because that fills in the gaps of, like you said, the rubber meets the road. Is how is this practically playing out in our clients in a way that's tangible and not theoretical? And I think that it takes practice and does take the training. And that's why, your book, you said, like, there's some very simple exercises throughout that you can learn to bring into the therapy room and just your own life, I guess. Anyway, go ahead, Dr. Weisz.
Yeah. One of the things that we want to add here is that MSEP is a very effective complement to the other psychotherapy techniques. So a practitioner could switch over from, say, brain spotting or EMDR, just very easily switch gears and flow back into just being present with the emotional experience that's being manifested in the moment. So you can go back and forth between a more cognitively oriented technique to MSEP to keep coming back to the emotional component of the experience that's appearing in the situation as it happens.
Yeah, a little spoiler alert on that is, let's say you are doing a CBT intervention, right? Or a
Right.
DBT intervention. Then a really powerful way to close that intervention is to move into MSEP and really ground the experience that that person is having of that intervention into their emotional experience, right? So MSEP really complements those other interventions the other way, which is that people need to not only understand and to memorize things, they need to feel them. That's holistic learning, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think we're feeling him anyway. Whether or not we notice it is another.
You're right. Just bringing attention to that.
Another point of that, and I do think that is some folks. That is one of the most difficult things. Is they feel disconnected from the body for various reasons, and when you're disconnected from your body, you're disconnected from yourself because you're connected. you just don't feel it, right? So how do we overcome that? There's many different ways, but this is a big way to start.
Yeah, and just kind of bouncing off of that word overcome. This is not about overcoming anything, this work. It's about how to be present with what is happening now without the need to overcome anything, which is a kind of a departure from what we're conditioned to do. In order to be okay, I have to overcome this situation, whatever it takes. Well, the opposite of that, the contrast of that is I want to be present with what is happening emotionally and simply notice, simply witness how it's manifesting in the body. And when we do that, something really effective and helpful begins to happen that is being driven by this intrinsic capacity for emotional processing that is not mental. So we want to learn how to be with the important things that are happening to us. And this MSEP process is a very simple way of doing that. How can I be present, really aware with, in contact with, and just noticing what I'm really experiencing? When I do that with the experience that's happening in the body, the processing begins to happen. The internal emotional experience begins to lose its intensity. We begin to perceive the situation more clearly without the obstruction from the emotional turmoil, and we learn something, and the experience itself has been relieved of some of its emotional charge, so it's less bothersome and problematic for us. All of those things happen when we bring that quality of attention to our emotional experience.
And that's something that's got to be experienced, because I know I've done some of these before in different contexts, similar exercises. And when you bring your attention to something that seems scary or difficult or frustrating or overwhelming, attention is relieved. And that is a phenomenon that people around the world can attest to. And yet it's not something that's taught in elementary schools very often, right? So interesting how that is.
Precisely. It's, again, coming back to this fundamental notion, attention is the most important instrument that we have in our consciousness. Attention regulates how we experience what's happening. If we bring a kind of a frustrating, frantic attention to something, that's going to influence how we're experiencing that situation. If we bring a curious and open, witnessing awareness to the situation, that's not pushing anything or trying to contaminate anything or fix anything. That quality of presence in itself is a really powerful and effective instrument that helps us to work through without having to overcome, fix, or solve something, but simply allowing it to experience itself without interference through our attention. And when that happens, a very beneficial effect is available. It's available to anybody who's willing to try to learn the simple process. It takes a little bit of attention to gain confidence and skill, but the basic process is so simple that anybody can learn it.
I think, Paul, your observation is apt that, we go where our attention goes. MSEP offers us a very simple, very lovely way to hold that attention, so that by bringing attention to that in this way, we're able to be with emotions, with the feelings that we're having in our body. And that's a really important instruction.
Yes. Wow. I've already learned a lot just from this podcast interview. I want to make sure you both get to say something to the listeners. Like, I always do this at the end, because we're kind of running to the end of the hour here, is that you imagine a listener out there, or maybe multiple listeners, and there's something you want to tell them, whether it be a layperson or a clinician. I want to give you both something to, speak to the listener out there.
Okay. Well, what I want to say very basically is you and I, all of us are emotional beings. Here is a way to be with, to be present with, to bring kind and caring attention to something that is so basic about who we are in a way that allows us to learn from what's happening, allows us to work through the situation, and allows us to have a more genuine, respectful relationship with an important part of our experience. That's what this work is all about.
I guess I'll add to that by sending a message to therapists. You are doing beautiful work, and you are sitting across from another human being and using your body as an instrument. MSEP gives you a way to work with what's happening in your body as you do that work that resources you and also gives you a way of bringing a special kind of presence to the client that you're working with. I have found it to be transformative in my own practice and in the group practice that I supervise. So, and the clinicians that I've trained in this are so grateful for it and tell me all the time. And so my message to therapists is this is really a plus for your experience and for your clients.
Excellent. Well, I think that's a good place to leave it. I want to make sure everyone knows that in the show's notes, I will have links to the mindfulness-based somatic emotional processing trainings, other related continuing education opportunities, and the book itself will be linked that you can purchase pretty much anywhere books are sold. I think the easiest thing these days is to buy something online, which I am a huge fan of bookshop.org, as everyone knows, because that gives a few cents to the bookshops that we all love to hang out in, which are sort of a third space because they don't always make you buy something. And so I do appreciate that your book is available there as well. Yeah. And personally, I'd love to do a training next time you guys are doing a training. I'm gonna come out to New Mexico. So it sounds like a
Come on. Yeah.
Sounds great. So yeah, I appreciate your time and looking forward to everyone hearing this episode.
Thanks for having us on, Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. It was a great pleasure to do this.
Absolutely. And there you have it. This has been another episode of the Intentional Clinician Podcast. If you are enjoying the show, please leave us a rating on iTunes or share the show with people you know. I would surely appreciate it. As some of you know, I am passionate about preventing future violence in the United States. I have started a nonprofit with colleagues called the National Violence Prevention Hotline, which is a 501c3 organization. We are endeavoring to gain funding and collaborators and volunteers so that we can start a 24/7 hotline and chat line to reach potential perpetrators before they may act violently. It is a bold effort to curb violence and save innocent lives by working to connect with potential offenders while they are in the planning stages of violence, help to de-escalate them, and provide resources so that they can get appropriate professional help. The National Violence Prevention Hotline is looking to open up a conversation about violence in society, the causes, and the solutions. You can learn more by visiting our website at violencepreventionhotline.org. You can get involved by writing your congressperson from our website, sharing it with your network, or even donating to the cause. If you are looking for an EMDR International Association consultant, I am a consultant and I can help provide 20 hours that you need to become EMDRIA certified. Just check out the show notes and send me a message and see if we're a good fit to work together. If you are in need of counseling, do not hesitate to make an appointment with a local counselor in your area. You can also make an appointment with the excellent clinicians at Health for Life Counseling in Grand Rapids as part of the Trauma Informed Counseling Center of Grand Rapids by visiting www.healthforlifegr.com. And if you are in the state of Michigan, you can also schedule a telehealth appointment. The recording you just listened to consists of the personal opinions of Paul Krauss and his guest, and while these are based upon the literature they have read and the experience in their respective fields, the information on this podcast should not be viewed or thought of as the definitive opinion on any subject. Listening to this podcast is not a substitute for treatment. If you're in a crisis, please call 911 or the National Crisis Line at 988. Support your local bookstore by shopping at bookshop.org. That's www.bookshop.org. It donates a percentage of sales to local bookstores all across the United States, which I think gives character to our cities and a place to hang out and a place to explore. You can order from the comfort of your own home online while supporting businesses near you. If you are a therapist and you are not involved in your local counseling or therapist or social work organization, please get involved to at least pay dues so that we can have lobbyists help keep mental health care accessible at the government level, and also expanding into schools and other places that need it. And also, if you didn't know, counseling organizations and professional organizations are working to keep us from becoming gig workers for a lot of large corporations who are coming in and trying to buy up local counseling agencies or basically pay you what they pay for people to deliver food to your house. So, get involved. Until next time on The Intentional Clinician, I wish you all a safe and peaceful week.